Indicted Fiction, the most untrue crime podcast out there. Everything you're about to hear is fictional, but the feelings you may experience are 100% real. The Case of Adam's Murder, Episode 13. The End, recorded the night of November 2nd. He's dead. Lenny's dead. They found him in his parents' backyard with a bullet hole in his head. Whizzed right through his brain. Shit, maybe the burning bullet touched a few memories of our first and only date. Should I kill myself? Is it me? Everyone around me is dying. Well, every guy. Adam's dead. Jamal got his ass handed to him the night after meeting me. My dad is in a coma from getting bludgeoned within an inch of his life, and my first real boyfriend is dead. That leaves Joel and Chuck. They have to be responsible. It's just not possible for them not to be. Joel came to my apartment today. He stopped by to see why I haven't been to work or responding to his texts and calls. I had only opened the door as far as the safety chain would let me. Chantel had gone back to her place this morning, and my mom was at the hospital. I was all alone, but my gun sat in the right pocket of my cargo pants. It seemed to buzz in my pocket, like a cell phone does while it's ringing. I could almost hear it say, "Use me, Abby. Touch my barrel to his forehead and tickle my trigger." I didn't, but it was everything in me not to blurt everything out, to call him out as a killer and become one myself. I told him I was sick and not responding to anyone. He cocked an eyebrow and asked why I was at work at Supermart and on a date if I was so sick. I knew someone had been following me, but it still made my heart stammer in my chest. He treated me as if I owed him something. He had only ever been a bad friend to Adam, and now I think he's the reason Adam's dead. I kept myself from trembling. I didn't want him to see how distraught his presence made me. "Fine, you caught me. I quit," I said, slamming the door shut with as much momentum as I could gain with the very few inches the door could be opened. I let out a shaky sigh and sat in my dad's big stretched-out recliner with my knees curled to my chest. I watched the door, knowing damn well Joel could blow it down any minute or shoot me right through it. Him and Chuck had been talking. Or maybe Joel was following me separately. Two stalkers? Are two stalkers working separately better than two stalkers working together? I think this all depends on if one stalker has been stalking me since a young age and the other has an entire drug gang's arsenal at his disposal. Mom called. My ringer scared the shit out of me. I guess my dad mumbled. He didn't fully wake up and he didn't say a full word, but he made noise. She was so excited. I don't know. I feel so separated from all of this. Like I'm staring in through a thick glass window, completely unaffected. I'm not the ant farm owner, but I'm an ant staring into the ant farm from under a shot glass. Confined, alone, tired. What if he never wakes up? Do we keep him hooked up to 50 machines until we die? How does that work? If Mom dies and I die while he's still unconscious, does the hospital just pull the plug? I should be by his side, doting on him. I just can't. I can't sit in that hospital room. I can't smell all the chemicals and linens. I can't listen to the beeping of the machines and the buzzing of the fluorescent lights and the hum of the heater and the drip of his IV. I just can't. I can't solve Adam's murder either. The police have done nothing with the photos I brought in, at least as far as I know. I've checked online hundreds of times in the last few days. Nothing. Not even another mention of a possible serial killer. All that work, almost dying, all for what? There is no justice. Adam will lay in the ground and rot. Star Bend will fill up with dead bodies, all people just like him. Detective Bill will continue to get paid, and the drug gang will continue to sell drugs to children and sick people on our streets. Adam was going to be the change. Now look at me. I was curled up on the damn recliner for at least 2 hours, trembling with my gun in my hands. I walked to my room and looking out my bedroom window at Smith's, I noticed someone looking in my window. He stood in dark clothing on the sidewalk right in front of the store. He had his arms crossed and a hat shading his face, so it was indiscernible, and he was staring right at me. I snapped my blinds shut and sat on my bed. The apartment was quiet without my parents. While they were gone, I rarely ran the heater or AC, and it was too cold for fans to be on. Just flat silence. Even my neighbors seemed to be quiet, and the cars out on the road drove by silently. It all gave me so much room to think. Where do I draw the line? If I know who killed my brother for a fact, and I've tried my damnedest to get the police to do something about it, who says I'm in the wrong if I do something about it? Thoughts of obtaining a machine gun and walking into Saki ran through my mind. I'd blow down Joel and Ricardo and saw them in half with bullets. Maybe I'd make Molotov cocktails and throw them through their windows. Yeah, find out where they live. Fuck their families. Look at my family, all torn apart and broken. I thought about how I could obtain explosives. I'd be willing to die just to make sure it worked. Wear a vest with explosive all over it, and boom. The place would be history. No more nasty blue pills for Joel. No more. Nothing. A father gambles against death for his daughter's soul. A traumatized man is haunted by the ghosts of a tragedy. A young couple is trapped in a farmhouse, surrounded by an unseen force. And the outward appearance of a handsome, unassuming dentist hides something dark and unhinged. In Fables to Depart By, experience 10 stories of dark fantasy and horror from the far reaches of the North Atlantic Ocean to the hellish surface of the planet Venus. To learn more, go to jasonrobertducharme.com. I fell asleep and woke up with some sense. I need time to grieve. All this time I've been avoiding emotion by attempting to solve this murder. We already know who did it. We should have known from the beginning. Adam was just in with the wrong crowd, and now I feel like everyone around me is crumbling apart. Waking up, I had to wonder if everything was connected. If who killed Adam was who killed Lenny, was who beat up Jamal, was who beat up my dad. I just don't know why a drug gang would target those people in particular. My dad was not a customer. As far as I know, Jamal and Lenny were not customers. I wonder if this is how other families are feeling. With as many bodies as are rotting out at Star Bend, there's got to be families wondering where they are too. Every day more missing persons posters are stapled to the telephone poles, are taped into the bus stops, are posted online, and I can tell you where half of them are going. I'm just stuck. I tried to eat lunch, heating up a TV dinner in the microwave. The macaroni and cheese was too wet and the meat was chewy. Doesn't really matter, I guess. You could have fed me filet mignon and I would have hated it anyway. Chuck called, like 11 times. By the last one, I finally picked up. "What is wrong with you? Why have you been following me around?" I screamed into the phone. Chuck was on the other end and sniveling. He said, "I just heard your dad is in the hospital in a coma. How could you not tell me? I want to come see you." I lied and said I wasn't home. He said he would meet me anyway. Just tell him where to go and he would follow. God, he makes me sick. I told him I didn't want to hang out, that I was busy trying to figure some things out. He kept bugging and bugging and bugging until I finally snapped. "Tell Joel this too. I never want to see you again. If you come back into my life, something bad is going to happen to you." Click. I'm shaking. I don't think I've ever been so furious in my life. Chuck is so demanding and always has been. I could never see myself putting my need for attention before someone's feelings. I guess he just doesn't care. I need to chill out, just think about something other than the things that have been consuming my mind for weeks. I guess the present situation is a good place to start. Do you think Dad will ever sit in this recliner again? It's really comfortable from his big butt wearing it down over the years. Feels like a giant, soft bowl. I think I'm going to go for a walk. Something happened. I'm in a rush. This may be the last time I ever check in. Chuck came over. I told him on the phone I didn't want to see him. I don't know what his problem is. And he didn't so much as come over as he did break in. I went to the gas station down the street to grab some candy. I guess I'm a depressed eater. When I got home, I talked to my mom on the phone for a while, watched TV and ate the candy, then got up to do the laundry. I was in our dining area, aka the small space between the living room and the bar of the kitchen, folding laundry and organizing them into their separate baskets. One for Mom, one for me, and this load of laundry didn't include any for my dad. That's when I heard it. Over cartoon laughter, I heard the faintest footstep. It was so light that I almost missed it, but there it was, only feet behind me. I had set the gun down on the side table next to the recliner. I guess after eating some sour candy, I felt at ease enough to part with my gun. That was a mistake. I turned around, much to Chuck's surprise. He lunged at me as I lunged at him. Arms grappling each other, we tumbled to the floor, and with him being the size that he is, he easily pinned me. "I have to tell you something," he whispered. I asked him why he couldn't just text it to me or tell me on the phone. He told me he couldn't say it over the phone. I asked how he got into my apartment, and he said he didn't have time to answer that. He spoke quickly. Joel was on his way with a group of men. They had plans to slaughter me. I never felt my heart race as it did pinned under Chuck. I thought my wrists were going to snap as he used his full weight against me. I didn't believe him at first, mainly because of the crazy look in his eyes. They were glazed and extra wide, but the pupils were pinpoint small. He breathed heavily in my face, almost panting. I thought of a rabid dog. Chuck said that they knew that I knew everything. I told him I didn't know everything. I didn't know anything about anything. All I knew was that Joel was working as a line worker at Saki. They had footage of me stuffing a USB in my purse while I was in the bathroom. I fucking knew it. I told him I had taken some files off the internet and brought them home. "Liar, you're such a liar," he spat. I asked if we could talk like rational people. He said we were talking like rational people. We seemed to bounce back and forth like this, getting nowhere and wasting time like sitting ducks. "Well, if they're on their way, why don't we leave?" I asked, interrupting a rant Chuck was on about how many guns Joel had. No, we can't leave, he said, scrambling off of me. He lifted me up by my shoulders and hugged me close. Should I have squirmed away then? Yes. Did I fear for my life? Also yes. He smelled of sour sweat and smoke, and heat radiated off of him like his insides were on fire. Could Joel have gotten this simple pot smoker to try his pills? I thought so. It was a definite possibility. I thought of the many times Adam came home sloppily high, itching and scratching and talking really fast. I think people think that's something from movies and TV shows, but certain drugs make people so hyperactive that they can't control themselves. Adam was a laid-back kid. He was rambunctious as any young boy would be, but there were always periods of long silence from him. Periods of introspection, I believe. In his days of sobriety as an adult, he would have these, and I think that's why he would ask me so many strange and dark questions. Was there any truth in what Chuck was saying? Yeah, so I had probable cause to believe him, but why would he know such a thing? Why would he be clued in on what Joel did behind closed doors? So I asked him, why do you know all of this? Here his eyes shifted to wet, sad puppy dog eyes. His next words made my stomach drop. It all started with Adam. Oh my God, Chuck was part of it all along. While he held me and cried with me, he knew more than I ever could. While he knew I was struggling for answers, he's had them the whole time. Here's what I can recollect. Joel began selling for Ricardo. Ricardo works for Saul. All of this I knew, but not without having worked hard for the answers. Chuck could just spew all of this out like it was nothing. There he sat on my dining room floor like we were hanging out on a Saturday night. Joel got Chuck into the business. Chuck was a cleaning boy. He helped mop the blood and dump the bodies. All for some green pieces of paper. Joel also got Adam into the business, but in a different way. Adam was his customer. Joel was giving away their new product, sour. Well, in the beginning at least. After a week or two of providing this new drug, he cinched up on his customers. When they couldn't pay but begged for the product, Joel gave in, most times partying with them. Ricardo was looking for his money, and when his golden boy had no explanation for where the product and the money was, his head was on the chopping block. Joel constructed a whole scheme to get free labor, but Saul turned it into a sick game. Joel would bring in the people who weren't paying, tell them they were headed to a party or something, then knock them unconscious. They would wake up almost entirely nude in a room full of tables covered in powder and presses. A guard would tell them, "Get to work," with a rifle aimed at their chest. Chuck knew all this because he would come in sometimes to clean up after the ones who resisted. Joel had lured Adam to Saki with the promise of another all-nighter. Adam had woken up and worked 3 weeks for these men because he thought his life depended on it. Saul pointed out that Joel hadn't thought this plan all the way through, and that they would have to execute all of the laborers. He decided to turn it into a game. Apparently the man loved horror movies, so he disassembled a conveyor belt and strapped on a boat motor to make it run exceptionally fast. The exposed inner workings of the conveyor belt proved to saw right through people, just like the videos I watched. Bodies were dumped right down the road at Star Bend, and most of the time it was Chuck and Joel doing the dumping, until Saul hired 2 new, bigger men, one of which had recently been shot in the leg. I stood up, wanting to be as far away from Chuck as possible. I asked, "Were you there?" He nodded solemnly. I felt no pity for him as I walked closer to the side table by my dad's recliner. Chuck was crying. Fat tears rolled down his cheeks, and he said, "I didn't want Adam to die, but it was either him or me and Joel." I said, "I wish it would have been you and Joel." He looked up to me, hurt. "No, don't say that, Abby. Oh, Abby, we've gotten so close since your brother died." A spear was thrown through my heart. The dots were slowly connecting. "Did you?" His words were mumbled, but I could hear them loud and clear. "Then other people started getting in the way of us. They had to be removed." He continued on as I listened intently. "I felt so close to you after Adam died. Like that barrier between us was finally broken, finally gone. I felt that I could help you in this time of need. Then you started working and talking about Jamal." A sick smile crossed his face, and he shook his head. "Stupid motherfucker didn't even know it was coming." He laughed. It was a cold, distant laugh. I stood there, stunned. Out of all my notions, I never believed Chuck was present for Adam's murder. It killed me that it was Joel, Adam's best friend turned drug dealer turned killer. If it hadn't been the conveyor belt of doom that got him, it would have been their new drug, sour. Before Chuck could continue, I asked, "What does sour do?" His eyes lit up. Maybe his cleaning job wasn't just for green pieces of paper. "Like Cloud9 itself, baby." I've never understood what that phrase refers to, but he moved on. "You know how pills are usually super bitter when they get stuck in your mouth? Well, this one's sour, like candy. I could eat 20, 30 of them, but they'd kill me before I got that far." He laughed. "You get all twisted in reality. One minute you're just chillin', Next minute there's a penguin sitting on the couch next to you, then the real high starts. Pot has always given me a good high, but sour is like that times a million. I don't really know what I'm doing during that period, but it's usually so short that I can't get into much. His demeanor seemed to loosen as he drooped his shoulders down, almost pouting. "What are the downs like?" I asked. His eyes snapped up to mine. He said, "Like the worst hell you've ever been through." "Where are you?" "I just took one before I got here." His face relaxed into a large, goofy grin. I nodded. I was only a foot away from the side table at that point. "Yeah, Abby, but when I'm with you, the high is always there," he said. "What a sick fuck." He smiled wider, saying, "That's why I beat your dad and killed your boyfriend." I killed him. The gun felt so right in my hands as I aimed it at Chuck's nose and pulled the trigger. The bullet careened through his forehead, a red wave of blood and brain matter spraying down the wall behind him. He fell limp onto the floor, and here I stand in my bedroom telling you all this. In a flash, a life is gone. A spray of blood and brain matter signifies the death of a friend. Who am I to take a life and go unpunished? I bore the fatal consequences of Chuck and Joel's actions on my shoulders for weeks. I gifted him his own fatal consequences with a bullet to the head. As bullets fly through the parking lot of my apartment complex, and as I listen to the bloody screams of Saul's gang and the police, I leave you with this recording so justice can be found for the countless murders of Olivehurst. Many lives were taken, and may the families find closure in the conviction of the killers, if that should ever happen. I hope this recording finds you well. I leave my phone on my bed and will surrender myself to the police and gang members surrounding my apartment complex. With you, I leave my final words. I love you, Adam. Well, that's the end of Season 1. Stay tuned for next week's episode where I go behind the scenes of writing Adam's Murder and why I decided to start a podcast. Get signed copies of Adam's Murder in my shop, get paperbacks on Amazon, and ebooks on Barnes & Noble. Be sure to leave a review on your listening platform or share Indicted Fiction on your socials or with friends. There may or may not be a Season 2, depending on listeners' responses to Season 1 and how many listeners I can get over the next few months. The fate of Indicted Fiction is in your hands.